Welcome back to Hoops HD, everybody. It is
Woohoo.
time for not only for our Under the Radar, but for the very last Hoops HD podcast of 2023. This is it. It will be next year by the time we do our next show, but we are doing Under the Radar. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood. David Griggs over there, John Salika below him. Right below me from Bracketeer.org, we've got Rocco Miller back again, the guy that knows everything about every team
Yeah.
that ever played, the history of he give you the roster of D3 and NAIA schools right off the top of his head, right?
There, there were three D1 games today. Rocco somehow went to five.
One of the 430 people
What's
that
up,
went to
guys?
Luke Air Force Base to see
Yeah.
Grand Canyon blow up Bethesda. That's him. No, uh, but seriously, this is our Under the Radar show. And Griggs, what does it mean to be under the radar?
Well, in layman's terms, it's you're in one of the 22 leagues that typically only gets one bid, and we always want to emphasize there's no rule or policy that says these conferences only get one team. It's just more often than not, it's the 22 that do. We think we're going to see a few of these leagues. We'll get into it, get more than one team this year. But that's what it is. It is not the Power Five, which is the Big 10, Big 12, Pac 12, at least for another year, SEC and ACC. And it's not the five other regular multi-bid leagues, which is the Big East, the Atlantic 10, at least usually, the American, the Mountain West, and I always forget one. Oh, West Coast. Yeah.
Yeah. The other disqualifier is teams that are in the top 25 of either the national polls. We do cover them on our Hoops HD report, which we recorded last night. So we're not going to cover those specific teams. That one team this year is and has been all season and still is James Madison. And I've got my cat that is acting very weird, so I'll
Cat's
apologize if I jump out here for a
yeah.
second. But I actually wanted to start the show kind of right where we left. We did record our let's see. Uh, I'm having a little screen trouble here. Okay, we did record our Hoops HD report last night. We ended the show by talking about that James Madison team, and one of the things we're talking about is the fact that they've got a matchup coming up middle of February against a team still to be determined. I'll actually bring up the exact screen we had at the end of the show last night here, because we're taking a look at, oh well, they're going to get one of the best MAC teams, and that MAC team we thought might be the Akron Zips, so I've got on the right there. And I happened to make a comment, well, that doesn't really do much for James Madison because Akron is sitting here right now with a 123 net. Not that it's anything that special. And I thought that'd be a good segue to just go right into this week's show and take a look at what I think is probably the most disappointing conference of these under the radars for me all season so
I would
far,
agree.
and that is the Mid American Conference. Um, and Rocco, why don't I go to you with the first question of really kind of what is going wrong here with this conference? It just has underperformed all season, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Toledo just lost a little too much last year with Ray J Dennis was a huge part of that team. Of course, transferring back up to Baylor to the highest level of college basketball, and not really being able to replenish him and taking some bad losses on the road. Toledo is usually a really strong home team. They just lost at home last week. Not to pick on them, but I think they've been one of the flag bearers for sure. Most consistent team. They've won the regular season championship, I think, 3 of the last 4 years. You have Akron, Kent State, kind of about where we thought, at least as solid as we thought they'd be. Maybe we hoped they'd be a tiny bit better, but I can't really knock those two teams. Ohio U, I think, eventually gets better. They've had some roster issues, and I think one of the biggest blows has been just the demise of Buffalo. Buffalo, of course, just a few years ago, an NCAA tournament team under Nate
Top
Oates.
top
Stayed,
15
yeah, and
in the
stayed,
rankings.
yeah, and stayed like a top 5, 6 MAC team with Jim Whitesall. Now, really kind of cleaning house under George Halkovich. It's been a disaster. I mean, they're 330th in KenPom, 330th in in that range, basically in any kind of database you look at. All the directional Michigan schools are still down. So there's four, pretty poor teams dragging the league down. And then I think, even a team like Northern Illinois, who had some really great wins in November, had some injury issues in December, and they've come back down to kind of average. And you just haven't had any of those teams from the middle pop up the way you would hope.
Yeah, and even you look at Ball State, I know they're third on the line here on the screen, the standings. Their metrics are horrible.
They
And I
are.
think that this is one of the worst 8-4 teams in the nation. I think you can argue. Yeah,
Yeah.
go
It,
ahead, Griggs.
well, if we could go back to the Akron profile, because I know that this is an odd thing to say about a team that's 8-3 overall, but I've been highly disappointed in Akron. Um, they started the season off with a win at South Dakota State. And if you go back, and I need to delete this because I don't want any evidence that I was ever wrong about anything. But like I said, that is a really good team. It is a really hard place to win. This was actually one of the more impressive wins of the day, singular wins, with everybody else playing so many home bye games. And South Dakota State has also been disappointing. We'll get to them a little later. But when you look at their tests, they were blown out by Drake. They didn't get the UNLV win. This was a team, all the things that we're saying about James Madison, all the things we're going to say about Princeton, Ohio U to an extent, but this Akron team I thought was a top 40 caliber team coming in to the season that would land inside the bubble. And while 8-3 is good, it isn't at large good.
Yeah, the losses are not horrible, but
You got to,
you got
yeah.
to you got to do a little more than that. They do have one remaining decent non-conference test with this St. Bonaventure game coming up this weekend.
Yeah.
Um, and then, maybe we could say, hey, it's not that great that James Madison is probably going to be hosting Akron in February. It is good for Akron to maybe have that shot
Yeah.
at James Madison. Not that I really think there's any shot for an at-large bid here at this point. Um,
There, yeah, there is some upside with Akron going forward. Getting Ollie eligible for the last two games. He was the MVP, 29 points in the overtime win over Gardner Webb the last game they played. I mean, he's a huge difference maker. It's going to take a few games for the Zips to get acclimated with him back in the fold. Is the way I'm kind of reading that. But we'll see. But I do think with Ollie there and suddenly eligible. You could look at the Zips team with the biggest arrow going up in the league.
You could, but something you said, Rocco, without even realizing you saying it. Overtime at home to beat Gardner Webb, having to
Yeah,
sweat out FIU. Southern Miss, another team that I thought was pretty
true.
good, has been really disappointing. Like needing, I don't know if it was overtime or down to the last possession to beat Northern Kentucky. This is just not a top 40 team. I thought they were going to be coming into the year.
And the two Mountain West losses were by one possession, and those were good teams, Utah State and UNLV.
Utah State is very good. Yes.
Yeah, so there you could look at the exact same information kind of from two different lenses, but sadly, based on where the MAC is between Akron and Kent State, I think those are going to be the best hopes. I do think Jeff Bowles may in fact be the best coach in the league, though, and if Ohio can get fully healthy, I still think the Bobcats are worth keeping your eye on.
Yeah, if they can get healthy, and again, this isn't so much of a criticism; it is an assessment. We were expecting a lot more out of Ohio, but they've
Yes.
had the injuries. Yeah.
Yep.
Salika, any thought? Let me give you a shot here to give your thoughts on the conference. Anybody else that is even worth mentioning here, or have we beaten this horse to death already?
I would say forget looking for a top 40 team. I'm just looking for a top 100 team. You've noticed where all the wins are coming from in the conference? They're all coming from tiers 3 and tier 4. Obviously, they're not getting tier 1. They're not even getting any tier 2s that I could find. Now, Akron is going to have one final opportunity against St. Bonaventure when they face them in front of a pseudo home crowd in front of Cleveland. But by the same token, St. Bonaventure isn't terribly far from Cleveland themselves either, so they'll probably be well represented in the House.
Well, Kent State Friday night is at St. Mary's. Northern Illinois is at Iowa. So there's a couple chances left here to do something non-conference, but that's it. I think this is, other than those Sun Belt games in February, this is it. It's going to be all conference play from here on out after this
And
weekend in this league.
one of the bigger surprises, and I know this is going to come off as a backhanded compliment, I don't mean it to be, is Eastern Michigan at 5-5. I mean, I just thought they would be an utter tire fire. They're actually 500.
Again, look at that 329 in defense, 253 in offense. I'm just not. I don't really think there's much here. If you pull up the profile, look
Well,
what
there
they
isn't,
beat.
but the fact that
They-
they're beating anybody is kind of
But
amazing.
they've got five of their 6 wins are sub 300 and non D1 teams, Greg.
Yeah.
So I went quite quite Can they contend for the top 8 and make it to Cleveland for the MAC tournament? Maybe. That's
Yeah,
about
there
it.
you go. Yeah.
I think that'd be a successful season for the Eagles if they make it to Cleveland.
Well, at least Eastern Michigan can say they beat the Lakers. Too bad it's the Lake Superior State version.
One last question, though. Coming up Friday night, Buffalo hosting Niagara in a Western New York Big Four battle. Can the Bulls get their first D1 win of the season?
Probably not.
I don't know.
It may be their only chance to. So,
Niagara and Canisius really step up in those games, so it's
Yeah, they
actually
do.
kind of working against them a little bit.
We'll see here. But let's go ahead and run through the rest of the conferences. We're going to start things off in the America East, like we always do. A conference that didn't see much in terms of play, but saw one very interesting game. It was is Vermont's trip to Miami, Ohio, which
No,
you know,
no. We're not talking about that game.
It's just such a head scratcher. We were just talking about the MAC, and there it goes. Miami, Ohio picks up. Vermont has had incredible wins now with the Yale game and incredible losses with this Miami, Ohio game, Griggs.
Yeah. It is sort of baffling. Like the distance between their ceiling and the floor is amazing. I still like them better than anybody else in the league. I've been impressed with what other teams have done, particularly, Lowell and Maine, even, who, while they're not contenders, certainly much improved and one of the better stories. I still think Vermont blows through this league. But yeah, maybe not every night. They're going to lose some games that you're not expecting them to, I suppose.
I'll tell you, Rocco, the team that kind of I took my first look at this week, though, not that Rhode Island is anything that special, but New Hampshire going and picked up a road win at an A10 school. Maybe there's a little bit of life for this New Hampshire team this year.
New Hampshire's had some good results, beyond the Rhode Island win. Obviously, Rhode Island's going through some of their own issues, but they beat Marist, who's having a nice year. They beat Brown by a lot, which was an early statement for New Hampshire. So they've shown some signs, and now they have 3 true road wins, which, if you can win away from home, that's always a sign of a good team. And Nathan Davis, I wasn't overwhelmed with what he did at Bucknell. Kind of parachuted to New Hampshire. Now it's his first year up there. I am a little more impressed than I thought he would be able to do in year 1. So a couple nice players there with Clarence Daniels. Forgetting the number 2 name, but those 2 guys can really fill it up for the Wildcats. Across the league, I would say Bryant might be playing the best ball. They just lit up Drexel for 104 points. I think that's the first time Drexel under Zach Spiker has given up 100 in 177 games. Stretches across 7 seasons, I believe. And so Bryant just playing at an explosive pace. Also went over 100 in the double OT win over Towson the weekend before that. And of course, have that Florida Atlantic win from earlier in the year. So I will say, just based on Vermont's inconsistent play and UMass Lowell, unfortunately going through the Koulibaly injury situation still, Bryant might be the team to beat right now. Surprisingly, they're certainly playing the best basketball going into the break.
Going back to New Hampshire, after Clarence Daniels, who's averaging almost a double-double, I believe it was Ahmad Robinson there. It's over 16 points a game. It was their second scorer. So they did have 2 guys at the top of this New Hampshire lineup that are very dangerous players.
Good players, very good players, all conference caliber.
Stalika, upcoming schedule in the America East, as again we are just finishing up non-conference play, and there's a couple interesting games here. New Hampshire team maybe over their head a wee bit at Iowa State.
They're going to be taking a shot at the moon. I think we're also going to be keeping on Friday, hoping Maine can get at least one more good non-conference road win at Minnesota, although the Gophers have been showing some signs of life of late.
I think Maine is favored to win that game, aren't they?
Yeah, if Maine wins at Minnesota, I think they should have to. I think they should be able to annex the entire state.
Yeah, I got a question. Are those the 2 teams furthest north in the entire nation? They might be in terms of geography. It's going to be
if we're talking about the lower 48.
In D1, yeah, because the Fairbanks and Anchorage are D2. I think you're right.
It might be. We have to check against some of those Washington schools, but let's have over to the A Center here, Stalika, which picked up an impressive 2 wins this week, and one of them was a overtime win by Gulf Coast over a non-D1 team. So what a week for the ASUN.
Oh, we should at least congratulate Austin P for getting the one win against a D1 competition. Not that we were expecting Eastern Kentucky, for example, to win at Alabama, but just about everyone was on the road in bye games right here.
Yeah, and we're sitting here, Griggs, now with 6 D1 wins is the most of anybody in the conference, and
Yeah.
there's only 2 teams with winning overall records against D1.
Yeah,
Not
kind
a-
of disappointing. Now, a couple of things: Liberty leaving the league and Kennesaw State getting gutted a little bit have caused the conference to, kind of slide back from at least where we were used to seeing the top of it. Eastern Kentucky's been disappointing this year. The team I'm starting to like is not one with a winning overall record, but I like them coming in. I thought it would be a 2-horse race between Lipscomb and EKU. I now kind of think Lipscomb's the team to beat in this conference. As Rocco likes to say, they just appear to be playing the best ball.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lipscomb, if they can get fully healthy too, I mean, they've been going all year without Ogasevich, who was
Yeah,
pre some people had him preseason player of the year. They're being very vague about the injury situation, as everybody does. So who knows if he'll pop back up one of these nights. But even without him, I mean, they've been really competitive. They took Arkansas to the Horn.
they
Uh,
did. Yeah.
They took Belmont to the Horn in a game where they were down 20 and they rallied all the way back in the rivalry game. I thought the win over Asheville, that's going to age really well as Asheville's finally starting to wake up. We'll see how they do at Florida State on Saturday. It's a Florida State team that's all over the place too.
Yeah.
I think just as of lately, Kennesaw State was they were perfect in December until their loss to Asheville, and that's an Asheville team they've also beat. So kudos to Antoine Petway. They've actually done much better than I thought they would do.
Well,
But
their schedule has been less than hard.
correct.
I mean,
Correct. Yeah, getting Georgia State was nice locally, but it didn't mean a lot, nationally. And then Upstate and Presbyterian are who they are.
yeah.
But just the fact they're getting wins in his first year, it's a good way to carry forward all the success they had last year.
Yeah, you mentioned as far as upcoming games, Lipscomb at Florida State. Florida Gulf Coast, who, as we mentioned, needed overtime to beat a non-D1, does get to host Florida Atlantic on Saturday. So,
Yeah.
Road test for FAU, but they should be able to pick up a road win there
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Uh,
FAU, not a bad team.
Not a bad team.
Not a bad team.
Rocco, the Big Sky Conference, I know is one of your favorite leagues. And I think we're just getting ready for a very good conference season here. Although, Portland State and Weber State kind of fell back a bit after what they did early on in the season.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, Portland State's been full of miracles. If you look at how some of those wins ended, the buzzer beater to beat Fresno, the miracle win against Portland at home. I think Cal Baptist was not a half court shot, but like a really really deep 3 to win. They've had 3 unbelievable finishes to get 3 of these wins. But hey, if you find ways to win, that's going to build a lot of camaraderie for your future. I think the team right now to really keep your eye on is the Montana Grizz. They swept San Jose State both home and away in dominating fashion, both by double digits. And that's a San Jose State team that, even though they don't really get any fans, they play pretty well at home under Coach Miles. Right after that night, they went on and beat Santa Clara. And Montana themselves went to UC Davis and cleaned house on UC Davis. Nice road trip for the Grizz. And if you look at some,
I'll
go ahead.
tell you, Rocco, though, my problem is I don't think a team has ever made the NCAA tournament with only finding 2 teams in the entire country that they can beat. And that's all that Montana has done so far.
Yeah, they swept them. Yeah, they swept them.
Their 4 D1 wins are against 2 teams.
And I mean, that really sets the stage for you're right. You're 100% right. That sets the stage for tomorrow night's Big Sky opener, which that will be the game of the night. Montana at Weber.
Yeah.
We'll really see what they're made of because the analytics are saying, at least in the last month, that Montana's been playing the best basketball. But again, you called it. It's only against 2 teams.
And sometimes there's 1 or 2 teams whose numbers you have. So, but no, I think you are right. This is we are ready to Big Sky play here. We will step back out of Big Sky play beginning next week on Wednesday
Yeah.
night. We'll be doing our next Under the Radar show before then, but when with the Big Sky Summit League Challenge games. But for now, a couple of Big Sky games for everybody.
Right. It's important to point out about Weber State, whereas like we talked about how we love their pieces coming into the year, and we were really big on them with when they beat St. Mary's. That win didn't age as well as we thought it would, but Weber State still has the same pieces. I think that like if they're able to get it to the gear that they're capable of playing at, they could be the best team in the league.
Yeah, 100%. They should be. And I
Yeah.
also just want to say Eastern Washington, all 7 of those losses are to Power 5 teams. So they're 4-0 against everybody else. Obviously, 2 of those are non-D1s. But I think we wrote them off early last year just because they had a bloated bad record due to all the bye games. I think they come into this Big Sky, at least themselves internally, come into this Big Sky season expecting to be at the top again.
Well, look for them hosting Portland State tomorrow night in their Big
That's a good
Sky
game,
opener.
yeah.
So
Another
that
good
might be the number 2 game in the Big Sky tomorrow. Stalika, Big South Conference, where yeah, I think we're also waiting for conference play, aren't we?
Well, I think High Point appears to be just about ready. At least they're getting an 8-point win at home against Canisius. Longwood was idle going into Christmas. Same for Radford. So yes, let's go ahead and bring on conference play.
Well, we can, but there is something else we do need to address here, and that is this UNC Asheville team picking up that win over Appalachian State on last Thursday. And this is a team, Rocco, that I think we liked heading into the season, had disappointed a little bit. I'm ready to start to jump back on the bandwagon here after that win, though.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I gotta trust our friend Brian. His Twitter's at Sports Matters. Really good person to follow in the Big South. He covers a lot of these teams. He wrote a really good piece after that Appalachian State saying this is the Asheville team we've expected all year. They went into Appalachian's gym and did that 1-13, and then followed it up with a revenge win over Kennesaw, a team they lost to earlier in the month. So yeah, with Drew Pember there and some of the moving parts, trying to get it all to work, it looks like it's finally starting to work. And don't forget how old they are. All 5 guys are seniors. A bunch of these guys came back to win this championship. And I just think the Big South's way better than they could have ever thought, with teams like High Point and Radford playing some of their best basketball historically.
That App State game was in Hickory, North Carolina, not at App State's home gym,
That's
though.
correct. It was.
So
Catawba Valley Community College, I believe.
yeah, so it's actually counting as a neutral site win there for
Yeah.
Asheville,
Okay.
not a road win.
Correct. Yeah, Pomeroy had it as a road game. My apologies.
No problem. It's one of those mostly road wins, I guess.
Yeah.
But for the NCAA net purposes, they are calling it
It's a neutral. Yeah.
He needs to give that a little tweak.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Actually,
and they got an interesting game at UAB on Friday, Chad.
Yeah, they do.
Yep.
And UAB is trying to figure it out. They finally just got a big win over Drake. So that's a super interesting matchup on Friday.
That is a real good game here on Friday. Although, Salika, we know you're going to be watching Toccoa Falls at Winthrop instead.
Well, that's going to be one of them. Then you get the Charlotte branch of the Johnson and Wales law firm going to Presby. But Dad, we have to look at Wednesday.
It
what's
is coming
next.
up here next Wednesday night. It's
Yes.
a week away. We'll have a chance to talk about it next week's show also. But it is
Yeah.
time for
Yes.
it's Winwood Cup round 1.
Oh,
One of our favorite rivalries of all time.
one of the biggest rivalries in sports history.
We will good next week. I think we already know what our feature conference is going to be.
Yeah.
Griggs, how about the Big West Conference, where again you have to look to the middle of the standings to find the best team in the league, but I still think they are the best team in the league.
I think so too. And if you pull them up here, this is when you live in under the radar world, this is the kind of thing that drives you insane. Had they gotten that win at San Diego State, and they almost did, I think it.
And by the way, we're talking about UC Irvine. For
yeah,
those
we're talking
not
about
watching.
the Eaters. For
Yes.
those of you not watching, thank you for clarifying that. But had they gotten that, I think it changes the entire complexion of their profile, and we're talking about them as being a team that can land inside the bubble. Without it, minus running the table, and as good as I think that they are, I don't think they're going to do that. Not in this league. I think that one of their wins better be that last win. But God, this team is good. And if they do get to March and get to the 12-13 line, which is about where I think they would be, that is a dangerous matchup in the round of 64.
And one team they're gonna have to go through here also, Rocco. Quietly
Black
won
and blue.
five in a row is their rivals at Long Beach.
Yeah, I mean, Long Beach is probably the most talented and athletic team in the league, which is it's actually a big statement. You know, Santa Barbara probably has the best player. UC Irvine definitely the best defense. You could argue maybe the most proven coach as well. But with Long Beach State's dynamic transfers, whether it be the Traore boys or former Husky Marcus Tassanis, who was the hero in the big win over USC, and they've also, of course, beat Michigan and DePaul this year. Yeah, this team is they've got the most merit so far in the league, and they bring something dynamically that is it's going to be really fun to follow throughout the year, just based on the fact that they play so fast and take quick shots. A lot of these other teams that they'll be up against at the top of the league, like your Hawaii's, like your even Santa Barbara to a degree, and certainly your Irvines, are going to really try to slow them down. There's going to be so many chess matches in this league; it's going to be phenomenal. But Beach has the talent to do it, and they come in, like I said, if they somehow had a dominant record in the league, they would get some looks at an at-large, I think.
Absolutely. As far as the rest of the league goes,
Northridge.
Salika. Hey, you talk about Northridge here? Salika, Cal State Northridge, go for it. They won at UCLA.
Yeah, we talked about Northridge getting probably the last Pac-12 after dark special where they go on the road and actually had a lead for most of the game. They led by as many as 15 points, and even though the Bruins were able to get it down to within 1 point, they were never able to get any closer in that game. And this was a team that had already had won at Chicago State, at Idaho, and Pacific, but no doubt UCLA is going to be the biggest feather in their cap going into Big West play right here.
Yeah, I'm not sure where UCLA finishes if they were in the Big West Conference. I don't think it's at the top, though. That's all I got to say. But here's the upcoming schedule, and we are going right into conference play here starting Thursday night. Irvine is going to be hosting Riverside and then at Bakersfield, while I guess we want to talk about this Long Beach team. They're at Fullerton, and then they're hosting Northridge. Maybe circle that
Oh, good. The
Northridge Long Beach
Rivervine
game.
matchup.
Yes, we have a Rivervine game tomorrow night. There we go. There's your under the radar game of the day already. One of our second favorite matchups. Rivalries. We must be getting to conference season. All the rivalries are coming out tonight. Sleek, let me stick with you over in the Coastal Athletic Association here, where a couple of notable wins, including UNC Wilmington going to Marshall last week, and then College of Charleston picking up that home win over St. Joe's.
It was at home, but I think you have to give credit to Charleston right here for getting the win of the week against the Hawks, who had been rapidly improving ever since their baffling home loss against Texas A&M Commerce. And UNC Wilmington, it appeared they had somewhat flatlined after the win in Kentucky, but winning at Marshall, it's not as tough to do this year as opposed to recent years where hillbilly balls become a thing in Huntington. However, Wilmington still on a bit of a 4-game winning streak. It's going to be tough to push that to 5, though, when they go to Arkansas in a couple days.
Yeah. These two teams, I got them up next to each other, both on 4-game winning streaks, Charleston and Wilmington. Wilmington at Arkansas, Charleston hosting Montreat. I like Charleston's chances to keep the winning streak going a little bit better, but Griggs, I think it is a somewhat interesting game, though, this Wilmington Arkansas game coming up this weekend.
Oh, for sure it is. And what does it mean if they can win it? Which they can. They're really experienced. It would be another road win, and suddenly I think that it really enhances this profile. And does it set them up for a bit if they can run through the Coastal, which they may be good enough to do.
Yeah, and maybe get this team with that one at Kentucky, Rocco, and it's still sitting with a 107 net, which is a bit of a head scratcher. 113 in KenPom, though. The metrics don't like them.
Yeah, I think it has to do with that 30-point drubbing they took to App State in Fort Myers. Unfortunately, those blowouts kill you. But I do think from a resume standpoint, they could really improve to a point where they get looked at. Should they go on a run in the Coastal, and even hopefully a good showing for their sake at Arkansas. The problem is you keep knocking off Arkansas, the less sexy that win's going to look, because Greensboro's already done it.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see how that shakes out. But I think the Coastals overall, it's a good league. You got 6-7 teams right now playing pretty well, and then even at the very bottom, North Carolina A&T's finally broken through for a couple wins lately, and that will help in some of these numbers if they keep playing better.
Yeah, they picked up the win at Coastal Carolina this week, a true road win for A&T, so that does help there. Here's the upcoming schedule. We mentioned that Wilmington at Arkansas game. A few other interesting games, though. Hofstra, who is also a pretty good team, at St. John's. Delaware
Yeah.
hosting Princeton. So
Big.
this last little batch here of non-conference games are actually pretty fascinating here.
Yeah, they are.
And the first game of the new year, I believe, is this Hampton at Drexel game coming up on New Year's Day. National TV for it, also on CBS Sports Network.
Yeah.
Whatever that means.
Yeah.
Rocco, let me get back to you here in Conference USA, where Louisiana Tech has been going in the wrong direction, and maybe this is Liberty's conference again.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. Those 2 losses by La Tech were gut wrenchers. Like,
Yeah.
just painful to even watch. You had a St. Louis buzzer beater in a game where Louisiana Tech did something that I've never seen a team do. Perhaps it's happened. I just haven't caught it if it has. But they had 0 turnovers in the entire game, and
lost.
It was insane. And then the Seattle U game, that was if you guys like replay reviews, you got to go back and watch that. There's about 20 of them.
Oh God, it was horrible.
Yeah, and there was a controversial foul called on the pass didn't even go in on a sideline play, and they called a foul. That's what allowed Seattle to send it to overtime.
Yeah.
Very disappointing. If I was Talvin Hester, I'd be beside myself, because they very easily could be 11-2, and those would have been 2 really nice road wins.
Yeah.
And now they're staring at 9-4 and on their way to Grand Canyon on Saturday, which, one man's fall is another man's opportunity. And so if they can pick up the pieces and go win that certainly makes up for it. But I still think that those showings show you that this is a pretty darn good team, because their only other losses are New Mexico and Colorado State, which I think we all agree are great teams.
Yeah, and they were right. I mean, they were good against Colorado State. They weren't. I mean, they were in the game.
And you want to circle 3 games after we get through this weekend. Liberty playing Alabama, another big game this weekend. But when we get to conference play, there's 3 games to circle. I think it's January 14th, Liberty at La Tech, February 10th, La Tech at Liberty, and the conference tournament championship game where the 2 teams should be playing each other for a 3rd time. Because quite honestly, there nobody else has done anything. I mean, Western Kentucky a little bit of life, but I don't think. Yeah, they're playing well. I just don't think they're in the same league as these other two top teams. There is the rest of that schedule. We'll finally get to the end of this Wax USA Challenge Series as well this weekend, which has been going on since I think opening day. So we'll get a final score. We'll get a final score in there after this weekend. We'll update you on that next week. The Seattle UTEP game is part of that, and the La Tech Grand Canyon game. I guess the Abilene Western Kentucky game also in there.
But if you're looking for a potential spoiler in Conference USA, also keep an eye on Jacksonville State. One-time Xavier player Kiki Tandy, who had some injury troubles in his career with the Musketeers. He's finally found his mark as the leading scorer for the Gamecocks.
They had a great week.
All right, let's keep things rolling right along here. Griggs, over in the Horizon League, Fort Wayne didn't actually play this week, but I still think they're the story of the conference.
Yeah, they really are. And while they were beaten kind of handily by Pittsburgh, it's just fun to see them kind of having the year that they're having, without having much history of success. I don't think they've ever been into the NCAA tournament. They're one of the stories of the conference, but there is another one. It's a team that's won. Let me see.
They're on the right side of the screen there.
Yes,
I
believe they've won 10 out of their last 11 games.
7 in a row. Also never made the NCAA tournament before.
Yes, and it is back. And all you all have it. If you don't, then there's something wrong with you. Penguin Fever is back.
Yeah, so they are doing a great job on beating up on Quad 4 teams. They did win at Ohio, win the road game at Ohio, though, so that's at least something. And the best part is that we are getting right back into conference play here. They're going to be hosting Oakland and then going to NKU in their next two games, while
Right.
Fort Wayne is going to be hosting NKU and Detroit Mercy.
But
So,
I do need to point something out about Penguin Fever. When you look at all their wins, there's only been 3 that are against teams that are 250 or worse.
That's
All
well.
their wins.
yes, okay.
What I said is technically correct.
It's technically correct. They've done a great job of being up on non-D1 teams here also. But hey, I'll believe in them for as long as you want to believe in them, Griggs, because
Penguin
we
Fever.
do love the Penguins, and
Yes, we
they
do.
are one of the very few teams
We
with
don't love their
winning
schedule,
records.
but we love them. All right.
Yeah,
I'm
some
not
news-
so, go ahead, Rocco.
Yeah, it's just some news on Northern Kentucky. Unfortunately, star player Sam Vincent tore his ACL in the St. Mary's game, and he is done for the year. And that's a big blow to the Norse. That just came out on Christmas Eve, so I think a lot of people missed that. But yeah, in fact, I just got it today. But so yeah, that's something to keep in mind for NKU going forward. They have the showdown with Purdue Fort Wayne on Friday. Another just random thought is I think Green Bay is going to be feisty all year. And they have another fun week of games hosting Wright State on Friday and also Robert Morris on Sunday. So maybe Green Bay can get 2 at home and go to 3-1.
Yeah, I think they will get both those.
The other game we got to circle here, of course, is Friday night, Detroit Mercy at IUPUI. Detroit 0 wins, IUPUI 1 D1 win. Something's got to give here.
That is centenary implications right there.
And we got the rematch. The rematch is on Valentine's Day.
Yes.
On Valentine's Day. That's at Detroit. That may be
Oh.
for Detroit's first win of the season, and
I'm
it may take
gonna
that long.
surprise my girlfriend. She will be legitimately surprised. Never see this one coming.
I gotta say, between what Detroit Mercy is doing and what the Detroit Pistons are doing in the NBA, this is a banner year for basketball in the city of Detroit, Michigan.
That's a great tweet right there, Chad. I won't steal it from you.
Hey, what about Eastern Michigan's the best team in town?
Jeez. Let's move to the Ivy League here. Salika. Again, we've mentioned this a few times. This may be one of the best Ivy Leagues top to bottom that we've ever seen, at least in my lifetime.
And that's not even counting the Penn Quakers, who, as Titel pointed out on the Hoops HD report, have had a pretty insane schedule of late. Now, if you look at teams that are actually winning, also keep in mind Columbia has been exceeding expectations for what seems like for the first time in about 4 or 5 decades. But Princeton and Cornell have been the carrying the banner. You look at what the Tigers have done, for example, getting 3 wins against Tier 2 and had a chance to get a win at St. Joe's. Unfortunately, they weren't able to pull that one off. And you look at Cornell, their only 2 losses are against the top 2 tiers, but understandable considering how well Syracuse and George Mason have been playing. But winning at Fordham, even though the Rams are down this year, that's still a good win by Cornell standards right there.
Yeah, and I think these are the top 2 teams, but there's several teams we can't overlook. You can't overlook this Yale team who heading the season was, I know they've stumbled a few times, but this was the best team, and this may still end up being the best team. They've got to go out to Santa Clara, by the way, before they come back east for the conference play and a game at Howard on January 3rd as well. But yeah, as you mentioned, though, Rocco, you've also got this Penn team. You've also got Columbia overachieved. You've also got Harvard in here, and only 4 can even make it to the Ivy League tournament.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. And I agree. Like it's going to be a great year. Most years, anyway, the Ivy League 4 or the Ivy 4, as they call it, comes down to that last weekend. And I can't imagine what all the fireworks we're going to be seeing. Ideally, everybody stays healthy, so at least we have 6, 7 strong teams, like it looks like now. And I think Cornell's the one I'm the most intrigued by, just because I've got to see Yale play a lot. I've got to see Princeton play a lot. I saw Harvard a few times, but I need to see a little bit more Cornell. Their only losses are George Mason and Syracuse, and they were fairly competitive in both, but they don't have like a massive win yet either. So I'm really curious which direction they go.
And their next 2 games before they get to conference play could tell us a lot. Number one, hosting a very good Colgate team, And while
That's a
playing
great
over their head, can they stay in with Baylor? Yale stayed in the game at Kansas the other night for
Yeah, they
a good
did.
portion of that game. Can Cornell at least play on that type of level against a very good Baylor team?
Yeah, that Colgate Cornell game is just a fascinating under the radar game. That's
It
just
is.
a
Also,
good game.
but
Every
also
year.
highlight Columbia and Fordham as well, because that's going to be a game where if Columbia really is improved, that should be a winnable game for the Lions this year.
I think you also got to highlight Penn's schedule at Houston, at Auburn. Um,
Man, it should make them better. I don't know if you'll
Yeah.
like the final score, but it should make them better.
It should, and you should play those games if you're
I
the point
agree.
is to make your team better.
Yep.
Griggs, over in the Metro Atlantic, another conference where although we got a couple of conference games in already so far, we really need to get conference play going here. Full
Yeah,
steam.
they did the thing, and a lot of leagues do this, is that they started conference play before the winter break, so you're not starting with the students not there. I still like Canisius as far as who I think is playing the best ball. Marist, I guess, has the best metrics, or there they are. They're one of the two teams that won their first two games anyway. But I'm a
Against
believer.
against the 359 strength of schedule, there's only three worst in the nation for
Yeah,
Marist.
right. But I still like Canisius as far as who I think looks the best out of this league and who I think can put themselves in a position to win the tournament and get the bid.
Win the tournament, get the bid, and probably end up on the 16 line, if not go to
Probably
Dayton.
so. Yeah.
Unfortunately, from what we've seen here from this league, I don't even know that there's too much to really circle. Other than we mentioned earlier, the big Niagara Buffalo game with, as you mentioned, Centenary Award, worst team in D1 implications for Buffalo here, a winnable game for the first time all season, I think. I don't even know that we should spend much more time on this, as opposed to just jumping right over to the MEAC. Which I guess, little shout out to Norfolk State beating a South Dakota State team that.
God, South Dakota State.
Well, that would have been a big win had South Dakota State been playing the way we thought they would play this year.
Yeah, I mean, for Norfolk standards, it's big to beat a team like that by 19 in a neutral court venue. They were down at the Don Haskins Invitational.
Yep.
They took UTEP to the Final Horn and lost by 2 in a true road environment. I think Norfolk, they have not lost at home. All their losses have been true road losses or neutral. So they're doing a great job. And North Carolina Central had a nice win over a team with a bloated record in Longwood. Handled them by 9, actually. So that's a really good win for NC Central, reminding everybody why playing games at MEAC schools are a dangerous endeavor for anyone. And and I think we've been saying it, but I do believe Howard is capable of winning this league as well. They kind of proved that at that Cincinnati performance and other performances. So even though they're 4-9, they've got a good ceiling for MEAC action.
Howard, with a handful of non-conference games, has got a game at LaSalle and then hosting Yale. By the way, they've also got the game against Hampton coming up in February.
They get an extra week because they're only going to play 14 league games. So
right. So a lot of these teams are going to be playing still another non-conference game here. We mentioned as we record this, I believe Virginia is pounding Morgan State. They were last time I looked at that score. At least maybe get a score update there.
And Morgan State's down by 22.
Norfolk at Tennessee on Tuesday. Yale at Howard.
South Carolina State at Nebraska.
There we go. South Carolina State with a road game. Coppin State at Maryland. That's a little rivalry series, right?
Yeah. Little Baltimore action.
Little local rivalry action there. Sleeka, over in the Missouri Valley Conference. Let's talk about some really good teams here, especially these top 2 and maybe a couple more below them.
Well, Indiana State was off during the past week, and I think we had teased they're actually going to be going to Michigan State for one of their upcoming games. You look at
their next game this weekend. That's a huge one. That is the Larry Bird Magic Johnson rematch game. Go ahead.
Yeah, but most recently they're coming off of wins against Ball State and Tennessee State, so now they have a 10-game winning streak going into Michigan State, and once they're done with that, then you go against Evansville, which is hard to believe that 2 of the teams from Indiana are probably going to be 2 of the potential contenders in the Valley this year. I mean, Indiana State was kind of a dark horse going into the year. We definitely did not see Evansville coming as far as a a contender here.
Yeah, and of course you got this Drake team that lost the overtime game at UAB, a heartbreaker for them. But I still think this
Yeah,
Drake
that
team
one
is
hurt.
excellent, Griggs.
Yeah, they are. That's one that they really kind of needed. Not that winning at UAB is big, but I mean, it's just not a game that you can afford to lose. Again, when you're an under the radar team that's gunning for the bubble, you have to hold serve in games like that that are not easy to win, but you still got to win them. Not as big on Evansville. I'm very impressed with what they've done. I just don't think that they look quite as good on the court as the Trees or as Drake.
Well, Rocco, I wanted to ask you about this Evansville team. They only have two losses. One of them was Missouri State, who just won at St. Mary's. So Missouri State's not a bad team in this conference. The other one blown out by BYU, one of the top teams in the nation. Uh, I think it may be a real good test for this team at Cincinnati in their last non-conference game coming up.
Yeah, it's hard to say because I mean the only two games where they really had to punch above their weight, they got pounded pretty good. When they went to, I'm saying road games, not at home.
Yeah. Okay.
Road game at Missouri State, they were pretty easily handled. The BYU game was a demolition. So I would just be encouraged if Evansville's more competitive. I was encouraged, you know, that last performance before the holiday, they had a 31-point win. That showed a gear that I don't think they had shown yet, where, you know, just going out and beating a team that like that and at the D1 level. I know they beat Ball State by 24 early. They kind of sputtered around a little bit and finding other ways to win. But I want to see if Evansville's truly going to be able to keep up with the Indiana States, the Drakes, the Missouri States, the Belmonts. That's another level of caliber of play. Even Northern Iowa is very, very talented. Evansville, to me, at least optically, performance-wise, not quite there, but the merits are there, and that's, you know, that's going to breed confidence, and I am really excited to follow that growth.
Yeah,
I will say if Evansville is able to win on Friday, it would only further expose Cincinnati as a squad who's been getting fat on bye games.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's another story that we talk about on a different show. But
Xavier fans are ready to pounce.
Yeah.
We do have that game there, Evansville at Cincinnati non-conference. Then we get into conference play after this weekend. Of course, the Indiana State Michigan State game circled that
That's
game.
a big one. Like, because
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people have seen seen Indiana State yet. They're good.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be phenomenal because, yeah, we mentioned it on the other show, but like Indiana State, Michigan State are both ascending at the same time, and it's always fun when you can get a matchup when two teams are playing their very best.
Yeah.
So let's hope the little break here didn't mess with that for either team. I would love to just see a classic battle down to the wire.
Yep, and for the national championship with Bird versus
Yeah.
wrong year. Off by a few years.
Yeah, off by about 50.
Hey.
Griggs, Northeast Conference. We've been talking about all
Yeah.
these leagues with only one team with a winning record. We don't even have an overall winning record, let alone a D1 winning record in this
No,
league.
but we have something we haven't had in for seemingly forever, and that's a top 200 team in Merrimack. And
Yes,
I think
we
that's
do.
the team to beat in this league. I like some of what Fairleigh Dickinson has done, not a lot. I still think Sacred Heart will come alive when league play starts. But as far as who's looked the best, I think it's Merrimack, and it's not even close.
Oh, I agree with you. They're coming off the win over Bucknell, which is, you know, it's a home win, but hey, it's a win. And when you look at what the rest of this conference has been doing, now we do got to give a shout out to Central Connecticut. Went to Fordham last week and picked up a road win against an A10 school. But I'm still with you on Merrimack being the best
Our colleague
team.
Lee Del Vecchio is still partying.
Yeah, in terms of the upcoming schedule, we're still another week away from conference play starting here. So not certain what else you're going to really circle. Merrimack is at BU. That's probably the most
might be a
interesting
fun
game.
one. That might be a fun one.
BU has not been very good so far this season, though. So I don't give Fairleigh Dickinson much of a shot at Illinois.
No, none.
And Stonehill at Rutgers.
No,
That's a Chad Sherwood rivalry game right there.
Yeah,
the Stoners against Rutgers.
Not as good as when Stonehill played Stony Brook, but that was a different story.
Yeah.
Let's just jump right over to the OVC, which we're struggling here, Stalika. We've got one team with a winning record against D1, and that's 5-4 Moorhead. Who at least has shown a lot of life, especially in some of their losses.
Well, mercifully, Moorhead is done with their 4 non-D1 games. Still, that would have been an awfully big cherry on top had they been able to hang on against Indiana if it weren't for their offense melting down in the final 10 minutes of that one. But I think at this point, what's going to be on the minds of the Eagles is you don't want to lose early in the OVC tournament like you did last year, because last year the Eagles were the regular season champs in the OVC and weren't able to cash it in last year.
Yeah, and well, I think mostly for this conference, we are done with non-conference play entirely. We are getting into the conference season now.
And
Moorhead's starting on Sunday at SEMO. That's their first game. Also, keep
Yeah.
right this Little Rock team with the road trip, 2 road games at Tennessee Tech, at Tennessee State to start things
Tennessee
off.
Tech is so bad that it's indescribable.
Mm-hmm.
SEMO so good last year, so bad looking this year. Outside of Morehead State, it just looks like a really weak league. The Little Rockos and Edwardsville, two teams that we thought we would be good, just haven't been good at all. And Western Illinois, for all of what I said about, well, they're coming in from a stronger league, they'll be on more even keel and able to compete. They've been disappointing.
I would disagree. I was going to say keep your eye on Western Illinois.
You think?
They're starting to play better. I've heard a lot of great things about Chad Boudreau as a coach. Is a JUCO, phenomenal JUCO coach, and they've won 4 in a row after a 3-6 start. Although 2 of those are non-D1, the other 2 were road wins. And for the OVC level, if you're winning road games against other D1 schools, you got to keep your eye on them. And I just think they're one of those teams anyway. If they're going to do anything this year, they're going to be doing it late in the year as they start to figure it out and click. And they look like they could have that potential.
And this conference has solved its problem of scheduling too many non-D1 games. It's going to be a limit of 2 regular season games starting next year. So,
okay.
That is nice.
Well, there we go.
Doesn't do them a damn bit of good this year. But
Can they call the Southland and let them know so they can do it too?
Okay,
Yeah.
so if this was next year, just add 2 more losses up to everybody's record.
Yeah.
I have a feeling those will be extra bye games, but let's jump over to the Patriot League, Rocco, where we do have this Colgate team, even though they're only 5-6 versus D1, and had that head-scratching loss to Iona. Honestly, just the way they got blown out by 20 points, I still think this is the best team in the conference by a lot.
Yeah, I mean they've got a lot of experience. Matt Langell's a proven coach. He's never been a coach in this long run of great Colgate success to really hamper or harp on the non-conference results. So I do think they kind of do a little bit more experimenting, if you will. But they have already proven they could beat Weber State. They won at Vermont. They beat a pretty good Gardner-Webb team. I think that's enough easily in the Patriot League to show that they are who we think they are. And another test with Cornell that we talked about before during the Ivy segment, just to get them prepared. So I think it's Colgate and everybody else. One team that's super interesting that started 0-7 is now only 3-9 and only beat 2 D1 teams is Army, just because Army took Indiana to the final minute. And lately, they're really starting to wake up a little bit, taking Stony Brook to OT and then going down and winning at UTSA by 10. I get it. These are like pretty bad teams in general. But for the Patriot League, if you're looking for teams that are growing, kind of like Western Illinois of the OVC, I would look to Army under first-year head coach Kevin Kuwick, who's been around the game for a long time at the Power 5 level, to get these guys. I think he's an Army grad, too, to get these guys moving in Patriot play.
Well, Army-Navy is one of those great rivalries. Stalika, how about Army taking on the Merchant Marines?
I will not have you mocking the alma mater of the great Skip Prosser there, mister.
Okay. There's the rest of the upcoming schedule. We do get to conference play on Wednesday here, finishing up non-conference play over the weekend. But Stalika, let me stick with you over in the SoCon, where I think we're setting up for a very interesting, at least 3, maybe 4 team conference battle here in the conference as we head to the regular season. Maybe 5, maybe 6.
I would say Samford, Western Carolina and Greensboro are going to be the 2 that immediately come to mind. Sanford is going to have the best metrics, at least as far as the net goes, and Chattanooga is going to be the team that's a perennial contender in the SoCon. Now, losing Milwaukee is going to be a bit of a bitter pill for the Mocs to swallow right here. Of course, that's not one of the more bitter things that's been happening of late, but I think if we're going to be looking at, yeah, there's way too many non D1 games to be focused on what's happened this week at least.
Yeah, not really what happened this week, but you're right. Samford picked up that win at Texas Southern. You got West Carolina, you got Greensboro, Rocco. Don't want to forget about them down in number 7 line there, but Furman I think gets into this race as well.
Yeah, Furman's dealt with a lot of injuries. I mean, they were really banged up in the Myrtle Beach tournament that I covered. So I feel like we haven't seen the full Furman, maybe just the last week or two, and they're going to be there at the end, I think. But like you said, Samford, Western Carolina are also here to stay. UNC Greensboro with that Arkansas win under their belt, now getting a chance on Friday at Texas. Texas, I don't think is as great as you might have thought they were at the start of the year. They've had some had some head scratchers. So yeah, and the problem with Greensboro is the mystery behind star player McKeel Brown-Jones, who has not played the last couple of games, and that's really a head scratcher because again, another team that won't talk about their injuries. But if somehow he's healthy and available, I could see Greensboro winning at Texas.
Oh, I could too.
Wow.
But
there you go. You heard it, folks.
Yeah.
But he's got to be available. If they're shorthanded, they're not going to win.
But we talked about Penguin fever. Are we loving Buckyball? Samford 9-2 against D1 programs. One of those losses, their opener against Purdue, getting it done. Best team I can ever remember Samford having, at least since they were joined the SoCon.
That's right. And Samford opened with the Purdue loss, the VCU loss. They've won 11 straight ever since. Obviously, a handful against non-D1 schools. But if you like Indiana State Sycamores, Samford's and Buckyball are basically running the same thing.
Yeah.
They go 10 deep, 5-out offense, just beat you in waves, and they are just crushing teams. Yeah. And I just don't know how high the ceiling is, but it could be really high.
This is mostly talk about Samford, honestly, since Scott Padgett and Carl Hess had their little run in. Are you stepping to me?
Which, is this the best team in Birmingham? I think it might be.
Oh, that's a tough one. UAB, I think, is interesting. I did highlight coming up next Wednesday. We do start conference play, and we start off with Furman at Greensboro. So, we're getting right into it with conference play
awesome.
here.
Yeah.
Keeping things rolling right along here.
There's only one. If you were to field, this is my question for Rocco, not to take over the hosting job. If you were to field an all-star team of players with everybody but McNeese State players and have them play McNeese, would McNeese be up by 20 at the half, or would it take them the entire game to win that by 20?
I want to give respect to some great players around the league and say it would be a good game, but I think it's a fair question. I mean, McNeese is that much better than everybody else, for sure.
Yeah.
I think for the rest of the season, all we're going to do is going to flash up the Southland standings. We'll talk 30 seconds about McNeese, and there's no point in discussing anything. The only other thing to discuss here is we do have a couple teams that are winless against D1 down at the bottom, so we'll keep an eye on that for award for the worst team in D1. But I think you're right. Fascinating. McNeese's last non-conference game coming up here Friday night, though, at Michigan.
That's a good one.
This will be the last chance we're going to really get to see how McNeese does against top or higher competition than the garbage they're going to play the rest of the season.
I know. I wish they had like a February non-conference random game against Grand Canyon scheduled instead of Grand Canyon playing Bethesda. Why couldn't they just save a date in February? Anyway, I'll digress.
A lot of non-D1 opponents also in this conference. I would like to suggest maybe they reach out to the OVC. Rocco suggested that earlier.
Oh, come on. It is the Battle of San Antonio, Our Lady of the Lake at Incarnate Word.
Okay, that should be an example.
I was worried we weren't going to see Our Lady of the Lake on the non-conference this year.
Let's jump over. I guess we're at the SWAC next. Stalika, we see all red, not a single D1. Not that they really think we've had a shot to win any of these games, but they did not win any games.
There was one home game for Texas Southern, but unfortunately it came against the Samford team that was just being discussed, and naturally it was a 22-point blowout for the Bulldogs, which at Texas Southern is actually a pretty good result.
Bucky McMillan, he's got Buckyball going.
I'll tell you,
Buckyball.
Rocco, might this be Jackson State's year? If you look at what's in this
Yeah.
conference, they are the one team that actually did something. They did did a couple of times. They actually have 4 wins away from home, including that Missouri win.
Yeah, they're a good looking starting five. I got to watch them in the Chris Paul event because they were playing so late at night in Vegas, and they won that thing, beating both Howard and A&T. And of course, like you mentioned, the bigger wins at Missouri and at Arkansas State were really impressive. But I think behind the big man that they have, Jordan O'Neal. I mean, he's awesome. Like very, very good athlete, really efficient player. I think these guys look the part. And if they can, I think the SWAC. I want to give the SWAC some credit because I think it's deeper than just Jackson State. I think Southern University is really good. I think Prairie View's got a good team at this
Preview's been
level.
good, yeah.
And Texas Southern always gets better. So
They always win the
good-
conference tournament, so that
Yeah,
doesn't
they
matter.
always win the yeah.
yeah, so I think there's a solid at least 4 teams at the top, maybe even deeper.
And got to give them a shout out here. 5 of the top 10 strengths of schedule in the nation are sitting, including 1, 2, and 3 overall, all in this conference.
Yeah.
And they got paid a lot to get that.
They
as
make,
well.
they made money. Here's the upcoming schedule: Jackson State at Northwestern Friday night.
Interesting.
Biblical studies on its way to Texas Southern.
and then to Grambling, a big road trip here for biblical studies.
Yeah.
Griggs in the Summit League.
Oh,
We talked about the disappointment of South
Oh.
Dakota State. Is it time to start paying attention to the team that's on the top there with the best net in the conference? And I'm talking
I
about Denver.
can't believe I just can't accept that I'm about to say this, but the answer is definitely perhaps.
Definitely maybe. A definite
Yeah,
maybe.
they haven't done anything, but they haven't, like, other than the loss to Edwardsville, who we think could at least, they have some pieces. They haven't completely blown it either, and nobody in this league has looked good. South Dakota State's been, exceptionally disappointing. I don't know what the Pioneers may be it. I just can't believe I'm saying that, but they may be. Who else in this league do you like? I mean, has anybody done anything that makes you say, "Oh man, look at that"?
I like the best thing I like about this league is that
Thomas.
you look at this column here. It's starting over again now for all these teams, and it gives it a
Yeah.
chance to do exactly that. As we get into conference play starting Friday night.
Yeah,
I go to,
Denver and St. Thomas are playing better right now,
they are.
but they don't have like the big wins to show for it. St. Thomas scared the heck out of Marquette, which was
Yeah,
really
they did.
impressive.
And St. Thomas still a transitional team, transitioning up from D3.
Yeah.
And I think they might be the best story of the league just based on how they're doing as a transitional team, which is
Yep.
unfortunate. This is a league that I personally really enjoy. And it's kind of heart sinking to think that it won't be one of those 12, 13-ish line type of years where they have a
No.
really good shot at getting into the round of 32. And I always thought this league was grossly undervalued, especially with the 4 Dakota schools. Oral Roberts last year was really good, but this year it just hasn't shown out at all. No one has, other than perhaps St. Thomas.
Yeah, no, we could be looking at a 15-16 seed from the Summit League, which is almost unheard of.
Yeah,
Unless they can really pick up some. They do have that Big Sky Challenge. Every team here will get 2 games in it. Maybe
Dominate
pick up a few, dominate that challenge. Could push you up
Yeah.
a seed line for a conference.
I think Oral Roberts at Denver will be interesting on Sunday, just off the cuff
Yes.
there.
Thank you. Sun Belt Conference. We're not talking James Madison, and we already mentioned a little bit about Appalachian State's loss to Asheville. But Sleek, anything else you got on this league? Since we're really not talking JMU on this show.
Well, Louisiana actually had a somewhat decent win metric-wise when they went to Houston and got the win at Rice last Friday. And other than that, they're only 5-5, at least as far as D1 opponents go. But it's been against a schedule that's been somewhat middling. They're 0-3 against the top 2 tiers, but at least once you get to tier 3 and below, they're 3-2 against tier 3, and then they've won all 4 games down in 4. But losing to Toledo and Wright State, you feel like those are going to be a little more winnable games this year that they probably should have cashed in on.
Yeah, it's still a little over a week away, but that game against James Madison where they're hosting JMU, uh, could be JMU's toughest test of the entire season. That's a game
I
that
think it will be.
I'm circling on the calendar. And Rocco, you're
Yeah.
going to be there, right?
The Cajun Dome game.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. January 4th, baby. It's circled in my head, so we're looking really good there. Can't wait for it actually. It's just one of those places it's not easy to get to, and it worked out. I also would say Arkansas State is a team I got to see last week at Belmont. And although they fell short by 4, they were super competitive. They actually led for more of the game, I think, than they were trailing. And ever since they started running the offense through Caleb Fields, although he didn't have his best game that particular night, they've been playing a lot better. Darian Ford, of course, is an Arkansas transfer. Dominguez is a big guy who can really shoot it from deep. And they're running, everything. Brian Hodgson's the new coach, and kind of the old Nate Oates system, and it's really starting to pay off for them. The wins haven't fully shown up. Obviously, the record's not great, but I think it's a team that can really ascend as the year goes on. Kind of like how South Alabama has done in past years, and heck, South Alabama could do that again this year.
And the Red Wolves, with 4 of their first 5 conference games at home, they could get off to a nice hot start here, and get some momentum running here into conference play. There is the upcoming schedule. It is the start of conference play beginning this weekend, including Texas State at James Madison, Monroe at Appalachian State, Louisiana's at Marshall. Griggs, the Western Athletic Conference, and how about them 11-1 Grand Canyon Antelopes off of that huge win over Bethesda today at the Air Force Base there?
Well, the game against Bethesda aside, Grand Canyon is the story. They have been all year. There's some other teams that I really like. I'm really impressed with what Tarleton's doing as a transitional school. Not quite sure what it. I still think Seattle is tough to go there and win. SFA's been wildly inconsistent, but when they've been good, they've been really good. Abilene Christian, I think, has been a little disappointing. I think they could be dangerous, but who's the team in this conference? It's the Lopes. And how exciting is this? I think that they're inching closer and closer to the rankings. They're really starting to move up in the coaches poll. I think they'll get into the rankings, not because I think they're one of the 25 best teams, but I think they are one of the best 40. And the way the rankings work is, when was your most recent loss? And I think that eventually, I don't think anybody's going to beat them. I don't see a loss other than maybe when they go to Seattle on the 20th. They should win all those games.
Well, this might be the game coming up this weekend. They're hosting La Tech, Rocco, Grand Canyon. They win this game, they have a chance to to just roll through this conference and put up a gaudy record and get themselves inside the bubble, don't they?
I mean, I agree with Griggs. They're very, very good. And Blackshear's a guy they just got back thanks to the court ruling. They're slowly breaking him in as you take a look at his usage so far. But I'll be curious to see how much he plays in the La Tech game this weekend. I want to caution that this WAC conference is probably better than it looks on paper. Going on these road trips is not easy. Playing when a league stretches all the way from Seattle to Stephen F. Austin, and you have to go to Utah trips, there's probably a few losses buried in there that you can't see right now. But if anybody can do it, it's this Grand Canyon team.
Yeah, I think Seattle's tough. I think SFA's tough on the road. I mean, I think even going to Abilene might be kind of tough. And the other thing is, what's going to happen is they're going to become the showcase game, especially if they crack the rankings. And that makes going on the road even harder when you're that team's showcase game for the whole year. But Grand Canyon's navigated this conference before. And this is the best. This isn't a knock on any previous Lopes team. We've been big on the Lopes ever since they were transitioning. But this is the best Lopes team that I can remember seeing.
Yeah, it's the best one they've had for sure.
Yeah,
and I think. But I do think Tarleton's pretty darn good. Utah Valley's a very difficult building to win in.
Very.
So So I just think there's not going to be a dull moment. And even when they were down at UT Rio Grande Valley, at the end of November, that game was not easy for them, and that's a bottom team.
Yeah. RGV has had a few games where they've been in it over the past couple seasons, but they haven't really turned things around there yet. There's the rest of the upcoming schedule. Again, the end of that WAX USA Challenge Series highlighted by the La Tech Grand Canyon game. One more team, not a conference, but Mr. Stalika, Chicago State, came a little bit short against Wisconsin on their one test this week.
Well, they were coming off of a recent emotional win against Northwestern, but I think we have to look ahead for the Cougars right here. Not to tonight's game at California Baptist, but it's going to be 3 days from now. Can they win the Chicagoland title with a game at DePaul coming up? Because their only loss within the city was at Loyola earlier in the year.
Yeah, they're not going to go undefeated in the city, but this may be for the Windy City Championship here for Chicago State. Griggs, I know you'll be watching. Go ahead.
Yes. How many games? They're 7-10 now. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22.
Okay, this is a great
Okay,
show here. We'll see.
yeah.
Griggs talk to
Okay,
us.
yeah, we're counting the. What I was going after was, could they get another game late in the season against a team that doesn't qualify for a conference tournament, or a situation like a Dayton or a Princeton that has a game to make? Not Dayton or UNLV, excuse me. That has a game.
They might. They could also. Obviously, it's not that hard to cancel one of those non-D1 games, and I would not mind if they did that. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, no, those are the only 3 remaining home games, and I think they would kind of like to get another home game or 2 in before the end of the season. So,
Well,
Yeah.
DePaul, that's going to be their home game right there.
there you go. There you go. DePaul home game.
And-
Yeah, but there is Chicago State. Huge week at Cal Baptist, followed by at DePaul, at K-State, and at Oklahoma State, all coming up in the next week here as they play that. I think it's an 8 or 9 game road trip that they're on right now.
yeah,
As they do anything they can to get games in now that teams are starting conference play.
right.
That concludes all the regular conferences, but maybe a little bit of time for some checking out our mythical conferences.
Mythical leagues. Yes, we've got the mythicals.
Let's start in the state of Utah with the Beehive Conference, where we are still with Utah with the lead, but we did find out that Utah Tech does have 3 Beehive games left, has a chance not only to catch the Utes, but actually win the conference should they go undefeated.
Wow. And I mean, the pressure is on Utah Tech, not being a transitional team. No transitional school has ever won the Beehive, Chad.
I don't think they have. They are eligible to win the Beehive. We
Yes.
have declared that.
Yes.
No games this week in conference play.
Mhm.
The Front Range Conference, we saw Northern Colorado with a huge road win at Air Force, which may have been the end of Air Force's shot here.
Yeah.
Major upset there.
Buried the Falcons. Northern Colorado, improving to 1-2, jumping over both Denver and Air Force.
Yeah, we talked about Denver could win the Summit League. I don't know if they can win the Front Range.
Yeah.
No conference games this week here either.
No.
I still think there's a shot for Wyoming to catch Colorado State, given that they will play
Yeah.
head-to-head choice this season.
Right. In Colorado State playing all 5 Front Range opponents. So
Let's check out the Back Range Conference.
Back Range, yes.
We got a lot of teams that got to start playing games here.
Yeah.
We got to get things rolling.
Well, it's
Yeah.
going to warm up pretty soon once UTEP and New Mexico State get their 2-game series on.
Yeah.
Yeah, still no games in this league this week either. Maybe we can get some games in our newest conference, the Top Range Conference, involving. We just saw Washington State beat Boise State last week to now go to 3-0. So how about Wazoo dominating? Undefeated in conference play. Boise has lost. Idaho has lost. Eastern Washington has lost.
Right. And we mentioned Gonzaga not playing any top range games. Rocco Miller confirming Gonzaga. I mean, they have this reputation, anybody, anywhere, but even this is too hot even for them.
They actually updated the motto to anybody minus the top range.
Yes. Yeah.
We have a pair of top range games this week, though. Montana
Yeah.
State's at Idaho State, followed by Montana at Idaho State. So those 3
Yeah.
teams are all getting their first games in. We could see Idaho State way up in the season in the standings if they can go 2-0 this week.
Yeah.
How about our Hoops HD top 10 lists?
Yes. Let's get to that.
This is our top 10 under the radar teams. We have the 4 of us all voted. Have a few honorable mentions here. Going out to Purdue, Fort Wayne, Long Beach, Cornell, La Tech, Samford, and Evansville. Not making the top 10, but getting a little bit of love.
Yeah. I had Samford 10th. So that was, I don't know if anybody else voted for them or not.
No, they didn't.
Okay.
At number 10,
Buckyball. Yeah.
We have UC Irvine just
The
sneaking into the
Eaters.
polls,
Good
despite
pick,
the
yeah.
weakest overall record of anybody in this field.
Yeah.
At number 9, we have UNC Greensboro there out of the SoCon. At number 8, it is Liberty out of Conference USA, clearly above La Tech this week. Coming in at number 7, we have, could it be?
Here we go.
We have the Appalachian State team taking a bit of a fall, but still on our top 10 list.
Yes.
At number 6, we have McNeese moving the way up the rankings here up to number 6 overall. At number 5, UNC Wilmington out of the Coastal Athletic Association.
Yeah.
Number 4, Drake out of the Missouri Valley. All for that loss to UAB does drop to number 4 overall, still way up there.
Yeah.
Their conference rivals, Indiana State coming in at number 3.
Indiana State way up there.
At number 2, we have the Princeton Tigers, who had been in the 1 spot for quite a while, hadn't lost, but they did get past. And this is for the first time ever in school history having sole possession of number 1 in the Hoops HD under the radar top 10. It is the Grand Canyon Antelopes.
Wow. All right.
Number 1 by a very narrow margin.
Yeah.
They've never been our number 1 team overall before. They are there. Congrats to the Lopes. On that note, let's pull us down and go to final thoughts. Stalika?
We've taken a bit of a sabbatical from the under the radar game of the day for the past couple weeks, but thankfully with the conference game starting to kick off in earnest, you will see some
Yes.
under the radar games of the day starting around 7 o'clock each morning. So keep an eye out for it. And there were some good ones that we teased earlier tonight as possible contenders. That's about a week away.
Yeah.
Rocco.
Shout out to Western Carolina's Vontarius Woolbright, a guy I got to see last week up close in the win over Vanderbilt. He was honored earlier today with the Oscar Robertson Player of the Week award. And, I don't think I've seen a guy yet this season up close that means more to his team than this guy. He really does it all. He's a rebounding machine and a guard-sized player that is 3rd in the country in defensive rebounding, and also, of course, can shoot it. He can pass it. He does it all. In his last, in 3 of his last 4 games, he's had at least 7 assists. So really just a great all-around player in the SoCon. We touched on 3 or 4 of the great teams in the SoCon. We did not touch on WCU, but this team can be really special behind him. And I really think he's almost as valuable, if not as valuable, as like a Zach Edey is to Purdue.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is could be a heck of a season for Western Carolina, but they are in a very tough league this year.
Very tough league.
A very tough league every year, honestly. But Greg, so on to finish the show off.
Yeah, just an observation, and I need to preface this by saying I am well aware that it is hard to run through any conference and blow through it, and much less win out all the way through. But in looking at Colgate, in looking at certainly McNeese, maybe especially McNeese, Grand Canyon, who we talked about, Morehead State, another team, it seems like you've got 4 or 5 teams that are in position to, if not run the table in the leagues, certainly blow through them. And when you start to look, I don't think Sanford will do it, as for the reason you just said. The SoCon is just too strong. But what do the profile and what do the committees do with a team that gets to 28, 29 wins, which McNeese could certainly do, and maybe some of the other ones too, but 26 of them are tier 4. Do they get into the rank? Can McNeese get all the way into the rankings? Because I fully expect them to finish 30-2. I mean,
historically 29's been the magic number. You get to 29, you get in. But,
yeah,
I think like 5 or 6 at 28 wins have been left out. So
yeah,
I don't think
we're left, as we later learn, pretty far out.
Right.
And what do you do with 29-3 when you add in the fact that even though it's a loss in your conference tournament championship game by McNeese,
it's a home loss.
It's a home loss to a bad team. It's hard to excuse that.
Well, one of the things, and
this Michigan game is pretty big, Chad.
Yeah.
I agree.
But one of the things that's interesting, and I know that I keep referencing this, is College of Charleston won 31 last year. Was it 30 or 31? And they were seated below the bubble, meaning they were out without the conference tournament win. At least because they were seated below the first four.
Well, you got to remember, Griggs, they select
They won
teams
20,
and then
31,
and-
yeah.
yeah, but they select teams and then they seed. So
Okay. But
and had they needed an at-large bid, they would only had 30 wins, not 31. So there's a few.
right. But they were in the rankings. And what are we going to see teams become nationally relevant with these massively bloated records like McNeese, for instance, but maybe some other ones too, and but still not be inside the bubble.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. Hopefully, Niza state's sake,
I think
they
so.
win that last game at the
Yeah.
conference tournament. On that note,
Somehow,
though,
somehow it works itself out every year. I don't know
Yeah,
how.
it does. Yeah.
on that though, I do want to take this chance to thank everybody for joining us all year long. I wish you all a happy, healthy, and safe New Year. We will see you back on January 2nd with our next Hoops HD report. But on behalf of Rocco Miller from Bracketeer.org, David Griggs, John Stalika, I'm Chad Sherwood. That's my cat behind me.
That's a Cat Sherwood.
That's Cat Sherwood. We will talk to you all again next year.